Alright guys, got everything salvaged off of both sides that I can, and I got the bolts out. One of the things about the Central Valley track is that once you use super glue to glue it on, you can salvage the rails, but this is really old rail. I soldered a lot of pieces together, so I don't really want to salvage that. I salvaged all the Code 70 rail. You just have to scrape the super glue off the back of it. If you're using snap track or some kind of track, you can always just put a little water on it, let it sit, put a little more water on it, let it sit until it gets soft, and then take like a putty knife. Always works best for me, like a really long skinny putty knife, some kind of long skinny knife that you can reach under and like kind of pry the track up very, very gently, because you don't want the ties to come apart from the rails. But unfortunately my little spotlight over here was attached to this side. Got all the bolts out, so now I'm ready to go ahead and turn this thing bottom side up and start recovering some of the wiring. Alright guys, I'm going to start recovering some of this wiring. I don't know if I did a video on the wiring before or not, but I basically just used, these are long pieces, and I cut them apart with a hacksaw. They're really good because they got a screw hole in between each one, so you can cut as many long as you need, screw it into the wood, and then you can run your bus wire along and just, you know, daisy chain the bus wire off of itself, and then reserve one side for your track feeders to come down. And I really like this way of wiring, so I'll be wiring the next segment of this layout the same exact way that I did this. It's really fast to wire and unwire and change things. You just have to unscrew, no soldering involved. Obviously you have to strip the coating off the wires in order to make it work. We're back. The old layout has been completely removed, salvaged, everything that I could off of it. And I'm about to start working on the new tables for the new layout. But while I had the whole space open in the room, I decided to go ahead and pull this diorama piece out here and start working on it. So in here, basically, the diorama piece was just laying here. I got my Bachmann Easy Track out, and like I was saying in the previous video, even though I'm actually going to be installing the Bachmann Easy Track on this layout, this is a really good example of using the Bachmann track as a tool. You can see where I actually scribed here with my pen. What I like to do is have different radiuses of curves from the Bachmann track and connect them all together. And then I get like my most difficult cars and see if they will navigate the curves or the clearances or whatever. And that way you don't have to, like, even if you want to do hand-laid track or something a lot more complicated, you don't have to go through all that headache of laying your track down and then it doesn't work, and the, you know, certain car doesn't go through a certain curve a certain way or something. But basically all I did was I laid the piece of foam in here, and you can see I had the Bachmann Easy Track just laying all on there going around, and connected it together in the back, and it's nice and sturdy, so I didn't even need anything supporting it to go across there. Obviously once I start running locomotives across there, then I'm going to have some kind of a, you know, piece of wood or a bridge or something. But I got this Athearn Automax car because this is the most troublesome car when it comes to corners. It has two different settings you can put, and I really like the close coupling one better. It looks a lot more realistic. I wanted to use that one, but in order to use that close coupling, you have to use no less than a 26-inch radius curve with this. So I went ahead, laid all my track on here. I ran this car around just like by hand like this to see if it would come off the track. And then I also ran this Intermountain auto rack, because this one's a little bit longer. This one actually does down to probably 24-inch radius curves fine. But because it's longer, it hangs off more on the corners. And by being able to see where it hangs off on the corners, I'll show you over here. I was able to draw where I'm going to have my tunnel. Plenty of clearance because I ran the intermountain auto rack through there. Plenty of clearance on either side of where the Bachmann track is going to be. Got a good 1/2 inch. Ended up with that tunnel portal. And then in order to get the tunnel portal, laid my Bachmann track back in here. Ran my highest car, which so far, this max, singular max stack car is the highest that I have, and I just wanted to have a good 1/2 inch of clearance, plenty of clearance on that. So that'll make sure that all my cars, Amtrak, Superliner cars, Automax cars, everything should be able to travel through here fine. And then what I did was, when it was still, this diorama was still sitting in here, I just got random pieces of foam. This is a good way to save a lot of money on your scenery. Is whenever you buy some, large item, like when I bought my computer monitor, my computer, anything that you buy nowadays comes usually with some kind of foam packing. Just save the foam packing. And these are actually very sturdy, and they're almost like little girder beams. They help to really shore everything up. And I just kind of mocked up where I went with my rock faces, because this is all going to be like a rock canyon in here. All my rock faces and my hills. And you can see where I drew like where the base of the hill is going to be here. And then I got these guys here and just hot glued them into place once I brought this out here so that I could have more working room. And also the table in there is kind of bowed, so I wanted it to be nice and flat. So, and then I glued all these pieces in here, and it still just wasn't quite sturdy enough for my liking. So I went ahead and cut some actual, I call them girders, but basically just stabilizing pieces that are like the backbone of what this hill is going to be. So the next step is going to be, all right guys, so I just finished putting all the newspaper on. This is actually the first time I've ever done this, so it's a big experiment for me. Everything is pretty much how I like it, except for it's time to do the plaster. I'm going to try a couple different methods. I'm probably going to go with paper towels and plaster. I might get a little bit more high-tech and do the whole plaster cloth or hydrocal thing later if I don't like the results with that, but as far as I know, a lot of people have had good results just using plain old plaster and paper towels. You can see one thing I did also was I cut out, I didn't want the straight back on it, because I want it to be kind of jagged like a mountain, and then I can get like a blue sky or more mountain type backdrop and just kind of pin it behind it. And I kind of have the idea of keeping this diorama something that I can also display if I ever like have some kind of, display to go to like a train show or something like that. But I used a couple of different things. One thing that I noticed was, I know that a lot of people tape the paper. I put the tape on the paper, and I don't like having all these straight lines running down the paper, because I'm afraid that when I put the plaster cloth on, it will, actually mirror that straight line, and it'll kind of look weird. So I tried to use as limited tape as I could. This little area over here was kind of a challenge because it's pretty much where I wanted it anyways, but I wanted a little bit more of a flat surface to be able to glue rocks and stuff onto there. But I found that I could wind the paper in and around it. I also used the peanuts to kind of make a nice little swoop there. And then, once I get everything done and painted, that could be like a little talus area, hopefully. And then up here, one thing I did was I put a piece of brown paper underneath, so that I wouldn't have to use as much paper. Literally, this whole cavity is not filled up with paper. It's just barely one layer of paper on top. And then I ran out of paper. And then I decided to make this mountain a little higher. So then I figured, well, if the peanuts will work, and, I'm already using all this foam, I have all this, scrap foam that is pieces that I'm, going to be throwing away. So I was like, why don't I just use that? So I threw this in here. I really like the way that it looks, and I'm really anxious to see how the, plaster cloth reflects that. It almost has like a rocky look to it, almost like a mountain, just without even having plaster cloth on it. But I did all that, put a little bit down here too, just to experiment like what it looks like with that, just the broken foam coming down. I cut that out pretty deep. I think I need to add a couple more pieces of paper or foam over in there. I might be able to find some paper or something to put in there. And then I'll be ready to do the plaster cloth. So probably when I come back, I'll probably be either in the middle of the plaster cloth or have covered the whole thing with plaster cloth. Obviously, I'm going to remove the track and freight car. Well, we got not all the plaster, but some of the plaster on the first batch, 2 batches actually. Actually, it was 3 batches of the plaster. I used up a whole, see if I have the canister back here. There's literally this whole thing, plaster of Paris. It's like a half a gallon, basically. Used up the whole half a gallon of plaster of Paris. I'm really happy with how it came out, and like all the shapes and everything. Obviously this is going to have a lot of rocks on it, so I'm going to be playing around, experimenting with different methods of making rocks. I might do some plaster carving, I might do some foam carving, might do some rock molds. If you have any ideas, anybody has any ideas, let me know what the best method for this type of canyon might be. I've seen people do some really nice plaster carving, and also I've seen where you can basically carve a piece of foam and then glue it in place. Like I just glue a rock face right there. That's kind of why I left this smooth. I thought, well, I'll try the, gluing the rock face right there on that. But I ran out, as you can see over here. And then as I was running out, everything got all textured with all the little pieces of plaster that were already starting to set up in the bottom of the thing. But a little bit of difficulty getting the plaster the right texture for the tunnel portal to be right, but I'm probably going to make some plaster carving plaster or get an actual tunnel portal and put in there anyway, so I'll just have to saw it out and put it in and then put plaster back around it, so that's not really a big deal. Some main problem that I had was keeping the plaster the right consistency long enough. When I started out, like you can see, like areas like this, it's like perfect. Like the plaster coats the paper towel like all the way, and then there's areas where it like got really thick and sloppy, like here and here. Like it's actually still a little bit damp. And then there's other areas like over here where the plaster was like starting to set up, or it was too thick, and I tried to thin it, and like the plaster still got on the whole paper towel, but on the outside part of the paper towel, it's just like, you can see here too, where it's just like the plaster kind of clumped up. You can see it over here too, where you can actually see the texture of the paper towel, which I guess that's not really bad here, but just it was like the plaster wasn't covering the paper towel like completely. But as long as it hardens and forms a nice face, it's still a little bit damp. It's like cold, so I don't really want to mess with it too much. I slid this diorama back and forth a little bit, and I noticed the obvious weight that's picked up. So that's interesting. It's an interesting thing there. I chose to do it without the track installed because I only bought so much of this Bachmann Easy Track. Like I was saying, I wanted to use it to establish the curves on the main part of the layout. So I didn't want to glue the track in place and then have to buy more track in order to do my little curve tracey thing where I trace curves off the track. But that's pretty much it for now. I have to go get some more plaster so I can make some more plaster cloth and finish this out. And then after that, I think I'm probably going to take a break on this diorama for now and actually work on the foam tables on the majority of the main island part of the layout.